Yeah,
You want to know what the best war movie ever made was?
Well, sure.
You make sure you see it, 'cause it's the only honest movie ever made, War Quiet on the Western Front from 1930.
One that's exactly right.
It's available in video. I've got a copy of it.
It's a great book, dude.
Well, I didn't read the book, but the movie had the smell of war, you know.
We're history students, we have to read a lot.
Say, listen, as a history teacher, we had a history teacher once who didn't really know history, but she knew how to run a class. And then we were a bunch of veterans there, you know, so he was all... Somebody asked a question. She was smart. She didn't know goddamn thing about history, I don't think, but she knew how to teach. Does anybody want to answer that? And then it'd sound like an English Parliament meeting, you know. Everybody wanted to answer that, you know, so she had the class made for the day. Try that someday.
So, what did you receive the Silver Star for?
Well, I received it for my work on the invasion. I continued working after I was hit myself, and I tried to pull a few guys out of the water. I tried. I couldn't always succeed.
Okay.
That's what it was. Frankly, there's another take on it. Silver Star might have been made to put something in the Mineola Home newspaper, because I don't know who it was who wrote me up. I don't know the name of the guy who wrote me up. But I was supposed to have plunged into the perilous surf. I didn't plunge, I waited. Plunged into the perilous surf. And it wasn't perilous by that time. You know, it was quieted down. You know, the tide had already come in.
Yeah.
You know, I'll tell you something else about that. You know, the other guys have bad memories. Like on the 20th anniversary, I remember seeing on TV Walter Cronkite and Eisenhower walking on the beach. And Eisenhower is saying the invasion took place around from 7:30 to wait for the tide to come in. It took place at 6:30. He knew damn well it did. We forgot about it, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, but he took place at 6:30 while the tide was still coming in, you know. But we get a lot of confused history. I'm sorry, God, things I remember.
That sounds like it.
What I want to tell you guys about that, I did not. You watch out for the teeth. Yeah, well. Yeah, well, I don't know. Do you know why wars are fought?
Why?
What do they teach you? To spread democracy?
Sometimes to right a wrong, or
Never.
because
Wars are
they
never
want
fought.
territory.
That's all. It's fought. Wars are never. There's never been a war fought for ideals. I don't think they go back to the Crusades. Wars are not fought for ideals. Wars are fought for greed. Now, some people may want to protect their land from people who want to steal it. That might be an ideal on one side, but there's always somebody out to steal something. I think. I don't know of any war fought for ideals. You want to say it's always been fought to take something away from somebody else. As I say, one side could be the angel and the other the devil, but there's always the devil trying to steal something. I think the Civil War was maybe not necessarily about slavery, might have been about England worrying about New England taking over the textile industry. So England backed the South.
So in that entire time during the war, did you try and practice Jewish traditions?
No. Oh, and I'll tell you another story about that. Well, how are you going to do it? In the first place, nobody practiced anything during the war. When I was in England later, we went to a couple of Jewish places and found some good food. They didn't have much meat, but they had good pickled herring. But you didn't practice religion then. Nobody cared much about religion. There were no chaplains in the front lines. Forget about Private Ryan. There was no chaplain in the front lines. They may have been. I didn't see it, but they probably wanted the field hospital, which was 25 miles behind the lines. But you never saw a chaplain roaming around with his cross in the front lines like they showed you in Private Ryan. For God's sake, it's crazy. What's good? Who's got time for it?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, they didn't have any. You died, you know.
So through all the films that have been made since World War II, a lot of them were just mock heroics and things
Well,
to make people look
I
good?
wasn't there, but I think Platoon smells of combat, smells of good, but a lot of them are just waving the flag.
So when you saw movies like Patton come out, you just called them garbage?
Not garbage, but a lot of dressed up frou-frou. I mean, Patton wasn't in the front lines. There was an article once in the paper, Dinah Shore, also thought she was with foxholes. Do you remember Dinah Shore? You don't remember Dinah Shore?
No, sorry.
Well, she's still in the catalogs. I remember Dinah Shore because I was a musician, and during the record strike that ended in 1949, Dinah Shore was the only one who recorded with scabs. She recorded buttons and bows with scab musicians. So anyway, forget about Dinah Shore's coming back, and she's posing with Patton with his pearl pistols all dressed up. He'd just been in the front lines, but he was still as neat and spicker, you know. What do you mean front lines? Who's going to go to the front lines dressed up like a general to begin with? You'd be picked off. It's one thing they didn't know about in the invasion. During the invasion, the lieutenants were still wearing their insignia. Then they realized, because they were picking the lieutenants off like mad, you know. They stopped wearing their insignia and all of that stuff. Just didn't need that anyway, the troop knew them.
So did you find yourself making friends with people you never really imagined meeting in your life? What type of people did you befriend?
Well, in the Army, it was like you get to be like a family. You get a package from home. I was in England before the invasion, and everybody would share it. Now, there were all kinds of people, and there was no integration of color, except in the hospital. There was a black guy next to me named Sammy. He had something wrong with his arm. I had something wrong with my rear end, and we could hobble around together. But since we had all kinds of friends. We had one guy in the Army. He was an Apache Indian. He was a nut. Wasn't at all like John Wayne's Indians. He never said ugh, you know. He laughed at us all the time, and he used to throw knives at us. So he thought he was an expert knife thrower. He thought it was so funny to drive us crazy throwing knives. After you walk in the door, he had a little English girlfriend too. You know, he's quite a guy. This crazy Charlie shit. We had all kinds of people. All nationalities mixed up.
Did you try and stay in contact with them after the war?
No, because we were all from different parts of the world. There was one guy I knew, there was a Jewish guy I knew from Brooklyn, Abe Neron. Abe had tried to be, speaking of religion, you know, Abe had tried to be real kosher. He didn't eat pork till he finally, you know, I think it's allowed under Jewish rules during the war that you can eat whatever you need to keep alive. But anyway, is that true or not?
Well, I do know that my father, who served on a destroyer in World War II, when pork was served, he would have the mess crew bring him eggs or just something else. But again, that was on a ship.
Yeah, but they cooked
a
it.
ship is different.
They didn't use different dishes, did they?
I know that, but he still ate the pork. So.
But no, anyway, Abe was funny because he told me when he got to England he'd never seen a real cow before. He said, you know, I've never seen a cow. He grown up in Brooklyn. Because they couldn't go to Macy's. Macy's had a cow on display on the 8th floor of their building. but once he got in England to that pork, he got addicted to it. He loved it. But well, you can't afford to. There was, I don't know, any offering. I don't remember the chaplains bothering us very much during the 6 months we were in England. I don't recall seeing any chaplains fooling around, walking around, doing anything. I don't know where they were. Maybe they were in London having fun. I don't know. We were in a small town called Bridport. It was a small town that had one movie house, an old Woolworth that you couldn't get much out of. Woolworth, what they called 3 and 6. We had 5 and 10s in those days. You don't remember that either, do you?
No, sir.
You know, well, like Woolworth grew up with the 5 and 10 cent store, and they had a certain logo on the front. In England had the same Woolworth, but they call it 3 and 6, 3 pence, 6 pence. You know, equivalent, close to our nickel and dime. Gee, I want to have a course in ancient American history, like from the 30s and 20s, 20th century history. Goodness gracious. Don't even know when Coca-Cola was 6 for a quarter. We used to be able to go to Crystal and get 6 hamburgers for a quarter. Not Crystal, those I think we had White Castle, but we didn't have Crystal. It was the same, more or less the same.
So, after the war, did you use your experiences to help you after the war, like as a medic? You never considered
Once my daughter got a cut on her lip, I gave her a good butterfly. The doctor said I missed my calling, but that was just for laughs. No, I just went to school under the GI Bill. And
so you never considered pursuing a career even as a doctor or anything? Would you just say the war interrupted your plans then? Did you had an idea of what?
Yeah, that's what it did to most people. It interrupted even the big time people. Robert Montgomery was interrupted. You know who that was, do you?
No, sir.
He was a big time movie star. He was the father of Elizabeth Montgomery. Do you know who she was?
No, sir.
Huh?
Swing and a miss. Sorry, we don't.
She played that stupid. She was the witch in Samantha.
Oh, okay.
Elizabeth Montgomery. Her father was a much more successful actor. He wound up incidentally after he finished acting after the war. He was a coach, Eisenhower's speech coach. Taught him how to sit and look relaxed and all that, you know. Yeah, of course he died of natural old age.
So how old were you when you got out?
I think I was 21 or 20. 21.
Okay.
Were you concerned that you might end up going to the Japanese War, the Pacific War?
Korean War, yes. As a matter of fact, because of my specialty. So I took a job. I saw it on one summer. When they were recalling these people, I lived near Mitchell Field, New York, and I took a job in the summertime, make some money, you know, typing not typing, but sending out the mail order recalls from the offices. And I saw it on a bulletin board. There was a job in the Philippines, job at the Air Force that I could fit into, and I took a job at the Air Force for 3 years in the Philippines. Yeah, that's right, honey. A real good glass of something good. I'm getting dry. But so I did work but I don't think they would have recalled me anyway. But I did take a job with the Air Force. The Air Force, that's what the LARCE. You know why they called it that? It's nothing to do with World War II. Thank you. Right in the late 40s. Thank you, dear. In the late 40s, the Army, there had been no Air Force before that.
It used to be the Army Air Corps.
Yeah, in the late 40s, the Army separated from the Air Force. The Air Force became a separate entity in itself. So what they did was they took their good administrative officers and they turned the flyboys over to the Air Force. So the Air Force was a little disorganized for a while because these flyboys looked nice, glamorous with their silver wings, but they didn't have much of a background in administration. That has changed since then, of course. But so the Air Force was a little disorganized, and you'd even see a comedian. I saw a comedian who once said, I remember a line. This girl was pretending to be a boy. She was dressed up as a recruit, and this guy's looking at her and recruiting. Even the Air Force wouldn't believe this, he said, you know. So he gave the Air Force a hard time in the early 50s. Of course, the Army had left them short-handed, you know. They took their administrators and left the Air Force with a bunch of aging pretty boys.
People like Doolittle?
No, that's different. Doolittle has been a professional since World War I, for God's sake. He was a general. I don't think he was still in the service during around 1950, was he? I know he'd been in World War I. I know he was in World War II as a general, but I thought he might have been gotten out by then.
I think he retired in the late 40s.
Doolittle must have been retired by then. But you guys ought to develop a course in early 20th century history, though.
We have a few courses, like we have a World War II course and we have a 20th century course. It's just,
We take a course in film history, because his allies do. He entered in a closed-top vehicles at around 20 miles an hour so you could see who it was. And what kind of dumb guy would enter while the fighting was still going on if they wanted him to have a job to do? So this is, Paris is Burning is sold some books, so. Stephen Ambrose, I didn't read his book, I saw him plugging it though on a TV show, and all the combat medics were drawn from the ranks of the conscientious objectors. I was in a medical detachment, and the way they worked, at each rifle platoon had a medic attached to it. And when they approached combat, the junior officer, like a lieutenant, would lead the platoon, and the rear would be the sergeant to keep the stragglers from straggling, and the medic who'd keep the hit ones, and then we'd have to run and catch up. And not one of us was a conscientious objector. I don't know where Stephen Ambrose gets his imagination from, or got it from. He wasn't there. I mean, he died in the 60s a few years back, so he didn't know it was, he was reading things. He commercialized on it, though, with this museum in New Orleans. They say it wasn't worth too much.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. So let me just answer questions, because I'll upset you guys too much. Oh, another story I could tell you, because I was hit on November 25th by a piece of shrapnel, and they sent me back to the field hospital. I still got it in there because things were so bad at that field hospital. It was around 25 miles behind the lines, that it wasn't like MASH. In MASH, everybody gets cured, and everybody gets saved. Over here, they had a bin, what must have been for small animals, with bodies piled like chickens in a supermarket. I mean, they sugarcoat things an awful lot, and of course, you get a simple-minded politician who doesn't understand things. They can't imagine things being that way, I'll be careful not to mention names.
Okay. Feel free, mention whatever you want.
Oh, no, my son's an FBI agent. He might mess up his promotion.
Oh, okay.
all right, we won't mention that.
That's why he's a Republican.
All right, so just so we can start at the beginning, were you drafted or did you enlist?
I was drafted. I was 18, turned 18, and I told you, buddy, here, November 20th, and small town was 6,000, many old in those days. I got my letter December 13th. They didn't waste any time.
So what year was that?
Well, I entered in 1943.
And immediately why were you trained as a medic?
I have no idea. The Army, years ago, there's Mad Magazine had a wonderful cartoon series that told the guy when he was young, the recruiting corporal telling a bunch of lies to the young recruit. Instead, it showed him 20 years later, the same corporal, he was bold, telling the same lies. They needed, I guess, because we could read and write. I'd had a half year of college then, and maybe we could read. We weren't illiterate. We had to have some ability to read and write and study, and they sent us to us. We had 6 weeks of basic training. So I don't know what we learned there. Learned how to make a bed, I guess, and polish a buckle. And then they sent us to a place that doesn't exist anymore in Chambly, Georgia. Chambly then was a very hillbilly rural town. It looked like dog patch. I just remember a broken down, unpainted station, and there was a young Daisy May in a washed out cotton dress and an old black guy in a two-wheeled wagon with a mule up there where I said, it's Chambly, Georgia. Chambly is now a very fancy suburb of Atlanta. But they had a temporary hospital called Lawson General Hospital set up there. And they trained us around the clock. Some of us had to get up at 4 o'clock, and some of us had an afternoon class. They called us surgical technicians and lab technicians. There are two types of people they're training. They taught us all sorts of things that we couldn't use most of when we finally did get into combat, like sterile technique. Combat, you stop bleeding, that's all. You don't worry about your hands being clean.
So, when did you actually join the First Division?
They sent us overseas. I got overseas. Incidentally, I was 18. I was supposed to go overseas when I was 18, according to the president's proclamation. That's all right. We got over there November 4th of 43. Went over on the Queen Elizabeth. Big, huge. I think there were around 5,000 of us on it between us and the Canadians. And tell you the funniest thing about that, we were boarding the Queen Elizabeth late at night. And we had on our outfit this guy, Tony Catalano from New Jersey, or Jersey as he was called. Tony was a real huge 5x5 guy, and he was determined to do everything, obstacle course and everything. And he did it, you know. And they put us in this little stateroom. Queen Elizabeth was a luxury liner, but they had it redone so there were 18 bunks in what used to be a mirrored bedroom, you know. Tony is standing and sitting in the doorway with his pack on, and he's saying, "Son of a bitch," he's saying, "I could have gotten out. I had to show him I could do it." Tony had woken up too late. The boat was already pulling out of New York Harbor, you know. But anyway, they separated us once we got to, they landed in Scotland. The Seagulls gave us a night treats because we had our helmets on, fortunately. And then they put us on trains. You don't know where you're going. Nobody, GIs, Germans didn't know where they were going. I mean, they lead them around. And we were attached to the 1st Division, the 2nd Battalion Medical Detachment. And we'd had very little field training, but they had invaded England 3 times. They had maneuvers in England. There was no secret. There's nonsense about it being secret, for God's sakes. Yeah, we invaded England 3 times. As a matter of fact, you want me to keep talking, just shooting my mouth off?
It's all right. We want to hear your story.
There's such inconsistency. When I was a kid, there was a comic strip called Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. Buck Rogers, quite fanciful stuff, came up with an atom bomb. They censored it. Weren't allowed to mention that atom bomb. Buck Rogers. Yet, on one of our invasions of England, Fox Movietone News was there. Now, I don't know for sure, but I'll bet you that the invasion pictures that you saw were made in April. Who's going to get in front of the troops to take pictures while they're coming in? So the Fox movie, we saw the camera, you know what the name, Fox Movietone News, incidentally, you don't know about that. Every week in the movie houses, and they didn't have television at all. In the movie houses, there would be a new newsreel each week from Fox Movietone News. Yeah, you see real antique ones called Pathé, but those are from the early 30s. They were gone, but the Fox Movietone News was photographing the invasion in April 44. So I guess alluding to the king.
So the first time you actually went into combat, it was at Normandy?
Yeah.
Would you like to tell us what that was like?
Yeah. Well, first I'll tell you what, we were mixed, I was with the 1st Division, all right? They'd been in North Africa and Sicily, Italy. I'll tell you a funny story from that we were told by some of the old timers. Most of them were pretty good guys. The cocky idiots you find are the ones who were never any place except Saigon, red light district, and they say, "Oh, I was in Vietnam," you know, that kind of stuff. But we had one guy, you know, in those days, we were born, most of us were born in the middle 20s. And a lot of us were from the New York area were to parents who had been immigrants and come over from the old country, and the old country language was still spoken in the home. And we had one guy there, he told the story, when they were in Sicily rather, he'd been captured by the Italian army, which was still on the side of the Germans, and they separated him from the regular other prisoners because they didn't trust him. He spoke Italian too well. They thought he was a spy. He spoke, he learned it in Brooklyn from his parents. But anyway, what was it like? Well, you don't know. Well, they took us in. I described a little bit in that thing. They took us in on little boats that we had the same boat. We were on big boats that we'd done the maneuvers with, so we got to know the crew a little bit. We got to know the crew, and didn't know what we would do. You'll see pictures of this in Bill Bolden's book and all that.
What are your memories of the boat? What was the boat like?
It's a little boat. I say you see a picture of it in the Bull. If you ever read Bill Malden, it's one of the crew. He didn't need footnotes. One of what's his name? Up front with Bill Malden. It's a series of cartoons. He got the Pulitzer Prize for that and everything. He's an excellent reporter. He just used pungent cartoons, you know. Anyway, the guy who was driving the boat was driving like this. He had his head down because the things were flying. I mean, you can see the tracer bullets flying, you know. And they dumped this out, not quite into the close enough. We were up to our waist when they dumped us out. You had to swim a bit, you know. And I mean, I know I took care of one guy, one of our sergeants there, who had a cut on his neck, and he was looking ahead. He was experienced from the other combat that he had in North Africa and Sicily. And then I felt like I was hit by a rock or something like that. It was just a bullet got me in the butt right here, swimming, you know, so must have missed my head by a half an inch, you know. But then they teach you, in the military, they teach you if you're hit in an extremity, to immediately seek cover, because, you know, even if you don't feel anything, you may become paralyzed in a second or so, you know. So I found one of these floating rafts, and I kept bobbing around to stay out of sight from the surprised Germans on shore. And I stayed, and I bobbed around the water for around a half hour. Then when I got to shore, finally the shooting had stopped down, and there was a little embankment anyway for cover. And I tried to take care of some of the guys there. Everything was wet, my bandage and all that, but I could still stop a little bleeding, you know. I wasn't paralyzed, but and the beach looked something like New Orleans looked in the newsreels. The next morning, I didn't look at the beach too carefully that day, but the next morning we didn't get taken back to the hospital till around 1 o'clock in the afternoon on the 7th, and I was just strolling around. It was really quite cluttered with wreckage of all kinds, tanks, bodies, and a little more congested than Private Ryan was, because Stephen Ambrose was the advisor on that, so he didn't know. Should I?
Before you went into Normandy, did you think that the veterans of the 1st Division treated you differently? Like you were a replacement to their unit?
A couple of them did, like the cooks, the ones who'd never been in combat. They're the ones who were, I was in Vietnam, you know, that kind of nonsense crap. That's why I wear this baloney. It shuts off people. Yeah, watch out for guys who brag about their combat, because they weren't there. You know? I mean, people don't talk. I'll take you aside. I'm taking sides. It is often said that combat veterans don't like to talk about the combat, and it is so painful. Well, that's bullshit again. Pardon me, young lady. You've heard those. You've been to New York, but they use worse than her. But they hadn't yet invented post-traumatic stress syndrome and schizophrenia as an excuse for giving 100% disabilities. That was invented back around 1950, something like that. But you don't talk about it because nobody believes it, so the hell with them. You don't talk about it because what do they say in combat? Van Johnson with his smiling face, well-fed, all clean-shaven, you know. And even then, later on television, you see Hogan having just a good time as a prisoner of war, and you see them having a wonderful time saving every life in mass, you know, and getting a lot of time for recreation on the side. So you don't talk about it because nobody believes it anyway. So the hell with it. Even the generals haven't been there, you know. They got all this fruit salad there. I think they get one each time they go to the grocery store. They get a different medal. You don't see. I mean, you don't see a Purple Heart up there at all, which means you're under small arms fire. I mean, you see the general with 40 pieces of fruit salad up there, and I don't know what they mean. Except, of course, they passed through a certain area at one time. Not that all generals were bad. Some generals were. Eisenhower seemed to be a general.
So, after you took part in the landings, what happened next? What was going on in France while y'all were pushing through?
Well, I'm going to tell you something now. My kind of wound, it was big. They ripped off my cheek there, you know. It was 3 inches long and 1.5 inches deep and 1 inch or 2 inches wide, you know. And I got a big scar there. They taped it together with butterflies. I didn't, because it was not going to disfigure me in any way. But I would have been out of the hospital and just coming in for dressing changes and all that if I'd been home for a week. But they can't. A guy was going. I couldn't move around. I was limping, you know. So I didn't get back to the outfit till around the 14th of August because I had to stay in a hospital. There was nothing else to do for me, you know what I mean, to keep me there, you know. 'Cause, I mean, till it looks like it's fairly dry and not going to open up again, you know. But in August I went back to France and spent a couple days waiting to return to your outfit. You know, you assigned me to a platoon in F Company, Infantry Division, and went on. You don't have combat every day.
So what was, on average, every day like? What was life like?
Well, some days you're just sitting around, waiting around, doing nothing. And some days, like, again, you gotta read that thing. I described it. There's one day you're sitting around a farm, walking back and forth, you know, waiting for the cooks to bring you up a warm meal. They used to bring up in these 5-gallon cans, you know. And then we were staying in German pillboxes. The Krauts knew where the pillboxes were, and they were excellent artillery people. They knew how to calculate, or whatever word you say. And we got direct hits with that. That's quite exciting, you know. When the pillbox that gets direct hits, lifts you up and drops you down. There were other things happening. I mean, but there are times. One time we were in the field in Foxhole without Bobo. The foxholes, and the Krauts come at us again. Incidentally, we didn't have any, there were no insults. That was the word they used. I don't know what the hell they called us. We called them limeys. They called us Yanks. Well, we were friends, though, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter. But once a little, the Krauts had used some smoke bombs on us to try to attack us, and then somehow they pulled back, and then I'm the medic, I'm there. I hear a guy say, "Hello, hello," and it turned out to be some little guy, little wiry guy, looked old to us because he was in his 30s and I was 19, you know, and he comes in, and I go to get him and say, "Don't go there, doc." I mean, they call him the medic's doc. Could be a trap, so I waited, let him come out on his own, you know. And he came in, he had $1 million wound, doesn't come up in court. $1 million wound is something that it's going to require you to be out of combat, but that's going to heal and you're going to be in perfect shape afterwards. And I had to piggyback him back, and the cutest thing about that was he wasn't a Kraut at all. He was a German. He was Polish. They drafted him when they invaded Poland. And we had a first sergeant named Lombarski. We had a staff sergeant Stroni and PFC Stephen Montorsic, you know, and they were all four of them were speaking Polish together when he finally came. He was a very happy prisoner, that little guy. And he had $1 million wound, which is very nice to have in those days. Something in his shin, I don't know what he had in his shin, must have a piece of shrapnel or something.
So were you with the unit when the Battle of the Bulge occurred?
Yeah, that's right. I think that was about, I don't know, November 25th. I know there was snow around, I think it was. I just got a piece of shrapnel in my leg. Tell you an interesting story about that. I mean, if you want to hear stories, you know, I went back to they sent me back to the field hospital, but they were so busy there, they told you with a pile of bodies and all that, and the nurses were working, saw a bunch of ladies in fatigues without girdles. Girdles weren't in style in those days, but these were ladies who were bouncing around working. They were really working, and didn't look like MASH at all. And suddenly across the street, there was this I see these guys lining up. They were going to have some sort of show. It was an old a small town with one of these stupid old movie houses that all small towns had back in the 30s, you know. And all these German civilians are lining up, and it turned out, the Jeep turned out was Marlene Dietrich. They brought her up. So she was, I don't know if you guys know her. See, I bet you get her being old, you know what I mean? This book of mine, my daughter edited it. She, big deal, Princeton graduate, she wants to be in publishing. She didn't know anything about the names there. I mentioned, have you ever heard of the Brown Bomber?
Joe Lewis.
Yeah, Joe Lewis. She didn't know. She thought I'd made a mistake. I had to check her out. She came out the Brown Bumbler. She fixed it up. You know what I mean? No, what was I talking about?
In the town with the,
Mark.
Oh, yeah, that Marlene Dietrich, this big, tall, blonde woman, and must have been in her early 40s, and and she did a nice little show. She only had, I think, 2 or 3 men with her and her. But the Germans were all looking at one of their own coming in to see that. She'd been a star in Germany till I think around 1932. And the German civilians, they were all lining up there while the GIs were going in to see that show. And she was nice. She did a good job. I mean, she got into an evening gown and sang Lily Marlene and all that kind of stuff. Sat down and played the musical saw for us. That was a hobby. Never heard of Marlene Dietrich. Don't you study movie history here? They never saw the Blue Angel? Right.
We're young.
But don't you have a movie history course? I was young too, but I know you. I learned about what the hell is this guy did Nanook of the North? Now I can't remember his name. Great documentary makers, I think it's not because I can't remember, it's because my memory is shot, Well, you ought to see The Blue Angel. It was a very fantastic German movie. They redid it with an American soundtrack. It was a great movie, though. And then, of course, she became a big star here. She's dead now, actually.
so you ended up in Czechoslovakia?
No.
You didn't? What?
After the second time I was hit, they sent me back to what we used to call the Air Force
So
in
you
England.
returned to England?
Yeah. Wasted my time there, but I saw a few good shows, But,
So after the Bulge, you spent the rest of your time in England?
yeah. And I didn't know any better. I thought you were supposed to do something. I didn't know you were supposed to just walk around in a rear echelon with 10 guys to each job. And this was peaceful after that, but some of the interesting things that happened there is one day they marched us down to a huge hangar, and we see a very well-prepared Technicolor film, called 2 Down, 1 to Go, because Germany had just surrendered, and Italy had surrendered, and Japan was yet to go. This was, I think it was in the spring of the year. And it was, they had General Marshall and Eisenhower talking and all that. And it was a very well-prepared and advanced film, But they brought it down the day after the Germans surrendered. They brought us down to see that film. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do anything except just walk around and eat, and see a movie now and then. But so I'm bothering a damn sergeant. Jesus, give me something to do around here. So my sergeants, they don't do much either. They walk around with their clipboard, Finally, so he comes to me one day, looked me up. I'd been trained as a medic, so. You're a dental technician, I am, Anyway, so they sent me, and they had a lab there. This was rear echelon established. They had a set up around 6 dentists, and they taught me first how to clean up the instruments, and this and that. They even taught me how to clean teeth after a while, which is a very simple process. They ought to not charge you for it, but it's like something like shining shoes practically. But we had one dentist who thought he was very funny. He used to stand there and cry. So and so back. He's got an office in Queens and Brooklyn. He's making, these dentists were drafted. And their buddy wasn't drafted. And he was making a fortune because people couldn't spend during the war. Of course, there was crooks who sold stamps, but you were supposed to have rationing. You couldn't buy a house. You couldn't buy this. You couldn't buy that. But the only thing you could do was get fancy dentistry and see shows. And this guy, one of the guys, he wittily got a guy's mouth all reamed out, Then he whispered to me loud enough for the guy to hear, "Get me the book. What do I do now?" He thought that was so funny, driving his patients crazy. Where's the book? So you're all history majors?
Yes, sir.
Oh, no, these are music.
Yeah, I'm kind of trying to get better. See what happens there.
What's your voice?
Very good. Yeah.
You got not too ambitious about becoming an opera star or anything?
No. That's not the plan right now. But that may change. Who knows?
I went to NYU. We had a girl there who had, in the late 50s, Polish girl. She had a shortened Polish name, but she she was very talented, and she probably worked real hard too after she left NYU. And she made the Met auditions of the year in those days, they call it. You know, they had a radio program.
Yeah.
And the last I've heard of her, she was teaching at Princeton. At least she hadn't been a star, but she done not leads, but she didn't have a name on a program. At least she wasn't in the chorus, you know. It's one of the few colleges that have real singing teachers who've done something. There's a lot of baloney in the singing teaching racket.
Yeah. So, were you a musician back then, during the war?
Well, I was young. I was 18. I hadn't done much.
Oh, you had musical experience then, though?
Well, I came here to Savannah. I was a concertmaster of their symphony in 1958.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that was a long time ago, 55 years ago.
If you don't mind us asking, how did you feel about the Nazi propaganda against Jews and the entire Aryan superiority? And
I mentioned something about, I found out that the few Germans that we met and have had to work with occasionally in disasters, we had to work with their medics together, you know. Once in that fall, the fall when I told you we were in a farmyard and we had to stay in their own pillboxes, we're walking around, and when their observation planes come overhead, you just lay low, don't let them see you, you know. And they drop a bunch of pamphlets. And we thought it was funny because, I mean, it was a funny sheet. And the title of it showed a poor guy on crutches with one leg, and his girlfriend was going out with this fat caricature of the Jew, you know, with a big nose, big gut, and cigar in his mouth, you know. And the caption this shows how behind the times they were. Gentlemen prefer blondes, but do blondes prefer cripples? Well, it's so stupid because Gentlemen Prefer Blondes was I think a best-selling book by Anita Loos in the 20s when we were babies. It didn't become famous and well-known until well after World War II when it was made into a musical. So, but somebody had been in America apparently in the 20s and they knew the title of the Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. So they used that as a caption for that one propaganda piece they dropped on us. We had a prisoner once whose family had lived in Arizona until 1938. The family remained Germans, loyal Germans, and they went back, and he spoke very good English, you know. And some dumb sergeant asked him, "What do you think of Hitler?" And he said, he's very careful, very smart boy. He said, "It's like you would ask me, what do I think of Roosevelt? Hitler is a good leader for the German people." I didn't worry. The Germans themselves were very mild. They weren't like the movie version of the Nazis. The Germans themselves. We are sheltered from this, even in the movie version, not the play, but the movie version of Cabaret. They cut it out too. The play, the original version was the landlady, the old lady, was in love. They were in love with this Jewish guy who ran a fruit store. And they cut that out altogether in the movie because they don't want to offend anybody. They want to protect you, poor innocent students, you know. So if you ever see the original play, they protected Annie. They cut Annie down to nothing in the movie version. My daughter's was in an amateur version of Annie, and they cut out the politics in it. There's a big production number there in the original that they didn't have in the movie called "We'd Like to Thank You, Herbert Hoover." Showed the shanty town under the bridge, you know, for really showing us the way. Because it was, you know, sarcastic.
Everyone blames Hoover.
Well, I mean, they were, yeah, they blamed Hoover for the
Have
Depression.
you ever seen the show?
But it was cut from the Hollywood version of the movie because they didn't want to offend any Republican customers, you know.
Oh, could you hold on while I change tapes very quick?
Huh?
Could you hold on while I change tapes?
I don't care what you do.
He's gotta do it so we don't like run out.
That's good. What are you going to do with all this stuff?
We're gonna turn it into a DVD and we're going to send one to the library.